Always has to be a shot at somebody.
No.
They're never clean.
They have to run. That's the only shot they have.
They do it for 82 games. We're about to find out.
He already has shown what he's capable of.
Did surprise me. I thought we were going to hang in there.
This makes me think that we do need to be humbled.
I actually think you're the only one who deserved that.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report on a Monday coming out of Thanksgiving weekend. And we are 20 games into the Celtics season. So doing some takeaways. This is usually the point in the year where we have a pretty good idea of who a team is. And joining us to break down where they're at, where the Knicks are at going into tomorrow. We got a second Knicks Celtics game to begin this season coming up here in Boston. It's Fred Katz from The Athletic. What's up, Fred?
How are you? What's going on?
Good, man. Oh, man. Still trying to figure out this team. They've been all over the place. It's the life of a 500 team, right? They have just a devastating loss down the stretch against Minnesota. Comeback falls short after a great first half. And then down 2 starters, beat the Cavs on a back-to-back, which I don't think anyone saw coming. And that's kind of been who the Celtics have been to start this year.
Yeah, 100%. You said it well. It's kind of the life of a 500 team. I imagine they'll be somewhere in that realm this year. The offense has been better than I thought it would be in a very interesting kind of way, purely based on like shot selection and just dominating the possession game in a way that few other teams in the league are. And Jaylen Brown's been really good, even though, White has struggled massively with his shot so far. And I think they're pretty good. They're pretty feisty. They're pretty solid, but slip-ups happen and, wherever they are, 5 through 11 in the East.
So let's start with Jaylen because he's had an interesting season. I think it's a great story so far, what he's been able to do with Tatum out and super efficient, taking a ton of mid-rangers, and he's almost redefined this offense around the mid-ranger, which is incredible. They were never a team that abandoned the mid-ranger per se. They were like middle of the pack through the first couple Missoula years, but now they're right up there at the top between him and Pritchard and a couple other guys there. But that's been his game. That's where he's scored from a lot of the time. As he noted on Saturday, hasn't gotten to the free throw line a ton, and then he tied his career high in free throws the following night in Cleveland yesterday. So the story of the Celtics this year was going to be, to a large degree, how much could Jaylen take over as their top option? Could he sustain his efficiency, his impactfulness with Tatum gone? And there's some ups and downs. He's had a few clunkers here and there, but he's been super consistent. And I'd imagine he won't be able to get into the MVP conversation just because of where this team's record's going to be at. But man, it's scary to think of where this team would be in any given game without him. And he has played the first 20 games for this team.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's getting into the MVP conversation other than Jokic, Shea, Giannis, and Luka. And I think those guys.
You're not throwing Brunson in?
No. There's no one unless one of those guys. I mean, Nikola Jokic is averaging 30, 13, and 11 on like 70% shooting. Like, it's not even close. What the rest of the league is doing compared to that. Shea has honestly been better than he was last year. He sat for 10 fourth quarters so far, and he's still averaging over 30 a game. And
I love that story
now. Like, he has been absolutely insane for a team that's 20-1, and he's the reigning MVP. Giannis, his team can't stand up straight without him, and with him, they're like competitive. And on top of that, he's just putting up these otherworldly numbers as he does everything, as he is their leading scorer, their top facilitator, he's their initiator. He is just everything that they're supposed to do. And Luka is just putting up otherworldly numbers right now, just a casual 30 some odd, leading the league in scoring, to go with 9 assists and 9 boards, and he's getting the line 12 times a game, which is just insane. It's honestly too much. Free throws are a little out of hand right now. There are too many free throws in NBA basketball. It's not a good viewing experience when Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic combine for 22 free throws a game. Like, it's just not a good viewing experience. It doesn't allow you to appreciate the immense talent that's out there to this degree, but he's been absolutely crazy. And then you got Wemby. I would not put Jaylen Brown in that class. However, he is a surefire all-star. I think given the circumstances, you can make a really good argument. This is the best year of his career so far. He's been a better facilitator. You mentioned the mid-range stuff. The Celtics in general, their shot profile stuff is like one of the most interesting. It's one of the most interesting offenses in the league.
It's like, try to score in the hardest way possible. Just do that every night. And they're fourth in offense. It's out of this world.
They are dead last in the league in the percentage of their shots that come at the rim. Let's call that rim ratio. They're dead last in rim ratio. They're dead last in corner three ratio. The highest percentage of their shots come on long twos. Like 13% of their shots are long twos. It's the highest ratio in the league. You look at like their locational shot data on like what their effective field goal percentage should be based on the shots they're taking. They should be 29th in the NBA. And they are succeeding on offense, not necessarily because of the shot selection. Their effective field goal percentage is super low for an offense that's so good, but they're a really good offensive rebounding team without personnel that screams offensive rebounding personnel because they're an awesome crashing team. And they never turn the ball over. They never turn the ball over, and they are just winning the possession game, and they're getting up more shots than their opponents. Is a very analytical way to play basketball, and it's working pretty well for them. And Jaylen Brown has been great. He's been great the whole time.
It's a smart way to play. It's a big reason I had confidence in them staying above water, which is pretty much what they've done to start this year. They look like a playoff team to me, should they stay relatively healthy here. And a lot of it is the coaching. I think the coaching there is incredible, despite the gripes a lot of Celtics fans have with Mazzulla and company after every loss. They just play smart basketball, and guys are brought in. They're doing these hockey style rotations where it's like there's a new starter almost every night and there's a new fifth closing player every single night. They utilize the entire roster all the way down to G Leaguer Amari Williams, who was on the closing defensive possession last night and playing backup minutes behind Luka Garza on Saturday or Wednesday without Kata there. So it's been pretty amazing what they've done with the personnel that they have. But given that offensive style you mentioned and the way that they're doing it, there have to be concerns about how sustainable it is, right?
Maybe. I don't know. Everybody,
you think they can keep it up?
There's this renewed. I don't think they can keep up necessarily as a top 5 offense, but where are they right now in points per possession?
Ooh, let's see. I'll pull that up while you talk.
Yeah. So there is this emphasis now, and there's always been an emphasis on winning the possession game. There's always been an emphasis on not wanting to turn the ball over, and there's always been an emphasis on wanting to get offensive rebounds and all that kind of stuff. It's always been looked at as good, but there is a greater emphasis on it now than ever, in part because there was this fallacy that the basketball world pretty much agreed on for years, which was that you choose one: transition defense or offensive rebounding. And I'll have a story on this out actually later this week. And the Celtics
and they're a great example of that.
A great example of that, where it's not true. You don't have to choose offensive rebounding or transition defense. And the reality is, if you crash in the right ways, and the Celtics are really good at this, and Mazzulla is like huge on this, where guys don't necessarily crash from the corners, but you want to crash from behind defensive players. And if you do that, then what it does is it pins those guys in. It doesn't allow them to get out in transition. It actually helps your transition defense. There has been this emphasis very heavily on winning possession games now, crashing offensive boards. Teams are obsessing over the offensive boards in ways they haven't before. A couple of years ago, 5 teams had a 30+ offensive rebound rate. This year, like 19 teams have a 30+% offensive rebound rate. It's just through the roof. And we've seen other teams that are doing the same thing. The Magic have made their way into the top 10 in offensive efficiency right now. And it's not because they're all of a sudden a really good shooting team. They are in the top 10 because their turnovers have been pretty good and they're getting offensive rebounds. The Houston Rockets are the greatest example of this. They're second in the league in offensive efficiency right now. And they have like middling actual efficiency when they shoot the ball. They just get 40 some odd % of their own misses and put them back. And if they never fix their turnover problem, then they're going to be even better. we've seen some offenses in recent years stand out. I mean, when I was a Knicks beat writer, like 3 years ago, it was the first Jalen Brunson season. The Knicks finished 3rd or 4th in the league in points per possession. And they were bottom half of the league in effective field goal percentage. And it was because Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein were just such monsters on the boards the whole way. And then Josh Hart, by the end of it, when they got him mid-season, there were such monsters on the offensive boards, and a Brunson-led offense didn't really turn the ball over. And so they were able to be bottom half of the league in like effective field goal percentage, just not really able to hit a lot of shots, but still be this really good offense. Now, I think the questions about its viability for the playoffs are valid. We haven't really seen an offense like that go bananas into the playoffs. But that being said, this Celtics team, you got to get there first. You know, this is not like a title contender. Like, you got to get there first. So put in whatever you can to actually make sure you get there and figure out the rest later.
Yeah, and development be damned, and Simons' role, which we'll get to in a second, or just any little long-term implications you could have to trying to go all in to win every single game and treating every single night like it's the Game 7 end of the world, which is what they've done. I mean, they are just doing whatever it takes to win every game. That's how Joe's approaching this season, and obviously there's group of the fan base that would probably like to see them tank this year, end up with a great draft pick, but that is not how they approached the first quarter of the season here. At least it was quite the opposite, with Jalen playing every game, and Derek finally took a night off on Sunday. Like, they are going all in to win as many games as possible this year from a coaching staff perspective. The front office, who knows where they're at on the start of this year and how that is going to benefit or hurt this team long term potentially here. I think their approach has just been see how it goes. And so far, so good. And I think what's nice about the start of the year here too, and this is more of like a granular takeaway, Jordan Walsh has become a starter for this team after not playing his first 2 seasons. And he's been pretty good. I was looking at the defensive numbers for him this morning against like Maxey, Jaren Jackson, James Harden, who he held to 3 for 7, even though he shot a lot of free throws in that game. Like, what he's doing against the opposing team's best player in that defensive stopper role has been super impressive, and it looks like what he could do for this team going into the future. Nemesh Keita, who they signed as a two-way guy a couple of years ago, has started every single game that he's been healthy for, 19 out of the 20 or 18 out of the 20 now. He put up 19 and 17 against Minnesota the other night with a couple blocks. And it feels like it's Luke Cornett all over again, what they're doing with him at that center spot. So they are developing, and they are seeing some young guys break through a little bit here too. I mean, Hugo Gonzalez isn't playing a lot, but every time he plays, he's making an impact and looking like he can be a good player for this team. So I don't think you would look at the Celtics' young cast of players here and say they have any guys who are up and coming, great potential players in this league. But they do look like they have some guys who are rotation players in this league. And that's important, especially given the way that they got a lot of these guys. 2nd-round picks. Ugo was like the tail end of the 1st round. Keita was a cast-off from Sacramento. I mean, they've done a pretty good job identifying talent here. Josh Minot from Minnesota, who was cast off from there after last year, has given this team some real good minutes this year. So Joe's made the best of those guys, but I also think the front office deserves some credit, and they're in a tough position now with the second apron, right, of figuring out guys who can be part of this next great Celtics team potentially.
Yep, 100%. And their cap situation remains interesting even after they got off of Porzingis, got off of Drew Holiday. They're a great example of when you get into the second apron. Part of the reason that it's intimidating for a lot of teams is because unless you do something that is so unbelievably, like, historically drastic, like waving and stretching Damian Lillard or waving and stretching Bradley Beal, you're not going to be able to just like get out of the second apron in one fell swoop. You kind of have to do it year over year. Like, the Celtics right now are a tax team, and maybe they can find a way to get out of that, but it will take some maneuvering. It'll take some work. It's really like a 2-year process of being able to get out of that sort of thing. And that's if you're constructed well with good players like the Celtics were and still mostly are. I don't think it's a coincidence that all the guys you just mentioned, by the way, are the possession guys. Like you mentioned, Jordan Walsh. Jordan Walsh is a huge contributor to why they are just getting more shots than whoever they play against. Right?
He was unreal last night.
He's a great crasher on the offensive boards. He is a really good crasher on the offensive boards.
And guess who he's going to guard tomorrow night? Jalen Brunson.
Mm-hmm. and he uses his length well. And on top of that, he's a defensive playmaker. He'll block guys. He gets his hands on balls. He gets deflections. He gets steals. Minot is a really good crasher for them also. Really good at getting onto the boards and has made some good activity plays for them defensively. Like, so much of this just comes down to, we're going to rig the math so that we begin every game with like an 8-0 lead. And when you can do that, you can squeeze out a lot of games that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah, they do never get to the free throw line. I did the math on that the other day, and it was pretty funny because the last couple of years they've
because they never get to the rim.
Right.
All of their stuff is just not getting to the rim, right? They don't get to the free throw line because they don't get to the rim. They don't get shots at the rim because they don't get to the rim. They don't get corner threes because you only create corner threes based essentially by hitting the paint and then kicking back out. That's basically the only way that you're going to create a corner three. No one's dribbling into a corner three. Like,
they're so extreme. And
they just don't, they don't get to the rim.
Yeah, and it is amazing to me. Like, I'm a proponent of Missoula and a lot of the stuff he does here. The one thing I'll give the fans who have gripes with him and some of the critics of him is it is extreme when you look at the amount of threes they take, never getting to the rim, never shooting free throw. Everything they want to do and everything they think can help them does go to the ultimate highest degree there. And they, to talk about like where you're starting a game from like an advantage, disadvantage perspective, the free throw thing, because they fouled more this year, Joe says, to force more turnovers. The fact that they're fouling at one of the highest rates in the league and never getting to the free throw line kind of does put them in a 7-8 point hole to start every game effectively in that department. And you can make up for it in some other ways here. But last night in Cleveland was the first time all season, 20 games in, that they shot more free throws than their opponent. And as you mentioned, that is this year, at least, an increasingly important part of the game. So I don't know if they figured that out last night. Cleveland is also the team that they tied in that department when they did end up getting a tie earlier this year in that department. But they are not going to shoot a lot of free throws and never really have under Joe. So I don't think that's something that's going to improve much. And I don't know, is it that important to get to the line?
I mean, I'll say this. It is important to get to the line. It's really important to get to the line, and it's important to get to the rim and bear all the fruits that come from getting to the rim. Yeah. I will say, when you talk about defensively, the fact that they're fouling a ton, which is super uncharacteristic for the Celtics. Yeah. Like the Celtics famously, dating back to Ime Udoka, dating back to Brad Stevens, the Celtics famously are amazing at defending without fouling. They're just consistently really good at defending without fouling. And so it's weird and jarring to see them foul a ton. I think they're 28th in defensive free throw rate right now, like just giving up, fouling a ton. However, it's hard to ignore that they're forcing way more turnovers because it's a balancing act, right? Where teams are willing to live with fouling more now. Again, because they're obsessing so much about the possession game. Teams are willing to live with more fouling. Like, you look at the best defense in the league, far and away, not even close, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Not even close. I'm not sure where they are this year. Last year, they fouled more than any other team in the league. By far, the best defense in the league last year, too. They were even better in the playoffs. They fouled like crazy. It's a trade-off that they know they make. They know the fouls are going to come because it's part of their mission to play make defensively, to be able to force turnovers, to get steals, and then to get out running from there. And it's just a trade-off that you're going to have. It's part of why I think we're seeing way more fouling in the league, across the league right now, on top of the way that games are being called. But I also think defensive habits are different. Teams are prioritizing going after turnovers more. And you look at those Celtics teams of the past, which had some phenomenal defenses. They didn't give up points, and they guarded on a string, and they had rotated beautifully, and they didn't foul. They also were like near the bottom of the league in turnover rate year after year after year after year.
And they were trying to, but they couldn't do it.
Yeah, they couldn't do it. And so I think this is a trade-off of, like, you want Jordan Walsh to disrupt. Like, he's the best when he is just being active and annoying. You want him guarding like that. You want Derek White to disrupt. You want Jaylen Brown to disrupt. Maybe that'll also make him a little more engaged when he's off the ball.
It fits the roster.
Disrupt.
It really does.
I think it fits the style. I think it fits the roster. I'm not saying the Celtics were going to play this way no matter who they had, but given who they have and what their strengths are, you want Peyton Pritchard to disrupt. Like, these guys are all good at this. They're all super active. They have a ton of good loose ball guys. They have a ton of guys who are good rebounders, who can read the flight of the ball well, like are good offensive rebounders, I should say. Kata's been really good for them. Kata's been really good for them. A really nice surprise there with how good he's been, and just kind of like how much of a question mark their center rotation was going to be. But that's the other side of it. Like, they're going to foul a lot, and they're not an elite turnover forcing team by any stretch of the imagination. But I bet you if you go through and you look back at the Celtics defensive turnover rate year after year after year, I bet you have to go back a long way to find a spot where they're just like middle of the pack in that stat.
Yeah, and I think it took 10, 15 games for them to lose a turnover battle. They were winning that every single night to start the year. And it's not like football, right, where that's like the most important thing in the world, but it does give you a nice edge, especially if you're winning it dramatically like they were. And they were right up there with the Thunder this year in terms of that differential. I want to get back to this conversation here in just a second, but first, let's give a shout out going into a big game here in the Boston area tonight. Patriots back at it, and it's a great night to build a Prize Picks lineup with all your favorite Patriots: Drake May, Stephon Diggs, whoever it might be. Football, the playoffs are approaching here. You got college football going on, bowl games coming up, basketball matchups every night. It's all happening at once while you and I are making decisions every day: what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch. There's one place where it feels good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. Head over there. There's a lot of great ways to play, and there is a new feature right now as well: early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out with those winnings before the game even finishes. And if your fantasy team is cooked, as a lot of ours are, for full season, you can make a fantasy lineup every single day over on Prize Picks. You don't have to wait till next year's draft. You can play it every week, including tonight, just for this game. How you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And for the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test, and it's simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2-player stats, touchdowns, passing yards, whatever it might be, rushing yards. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. You can even combine players from different leagues. Want to pick more on Steph Curry's points, 3-pointers, and assists? You can now pick them all in the same lineup with the stacks feature over there as well. So download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So here's we talked a little bit about the second apron, the tax situation with this team. And one of my big mysteries as we head into the second quarter of the season with this team is going to be what they do with Anthony Simons, who has shot well, who has had his moments. I thought last night he was great with Derek White out, just getting his shot off with lineups that didn't have many creators. You can see that this guy has skills that are useful for an NBA team. But with all the stuff we're talking about, possessions, defense, bunch of different stuff that they're prioritizing, they aren't strengths of his game. And it was funny, I looked it up last night because he grabbed an offensive rebound. It was his 7th offensive rebound in 20 games, which, he's not helping you too much in that department. But shooting, he's helping you a ton. And this hasn't been a very good shooting team to begin this year. You understand the fact that he's probably not part of this team's future. You understand the fact that White and Pritchard are probably a little bit better players for this team, or have more trust, fit what they want to do, however you want to describe it when you're talking about those 3 players. I think there's some comparisons to a couple of years ago when they had Derek White, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, and they were juggling those 3 players every single night down the stretch of games. And Brogdon, more often than not, was the odd man out back then, and now it's Simon. So they clearly have tried to trade him, going back to when they first acquired him, and haven't been able to figure it out. He's an expiring contract, so I'd assume that if that's the worst case scenario, you get to the end of the year and he's just $27, $28 million off the books, fair enough. But how do you look at the rest of the season for Simons, what he's done so far? Who could maybe be interested in him, and who could benefit from having him on their team going forward here? Because it it's been a little bit of a weird situation to start this year for him.
It's really difficult to find a team for him that makes sense, less because of who he is and more because of what he makes. So he makes
Yeah.
27 million this year, and those salaries in the high 20s, that's when it starts to get difficult to trade in season. You've got a lot of
Yeah.
teams right now who, because of the way the rules in the collective bargaining agreement, that because of the way their salary structures are set up, they're not able to take in more money than they send out on a trade. It's you kind of have to be able to find a third team in a lot of those scenarios, and it becomes really difficult to trade even a $27 million expiring. It's doable. I could see them doing it. But like it's hard to find. I haven't done the Simons exercise specifically. I should.
So there's been some reporting around the Bucks who I don't get because they have a million guards and Ryan Rollins is playing well. I know Cole Anthony has struggled, but I don't get the need there unless they're just trying to have Damian Lillard back in the lineup again in the form of Anthony Simons. Brooklyn's the one who makes sense, obviously, given the cap circumstances there. And there was a report that they talked about a salary dump there potentially. But is it even worth dumping his salary when it's just going to expire at the end of the year, especially if you're attaching picks?
Well, it is if it helps you get out of the tax and you feel like that's a worthwhile thing. I
Yeah.
could see that being worthwhile if it gets you out of the tax. Like you're a team that is where do you think they're going to finish up this year? Like what's your best case scenario for them, taking injuries off the table? What's your best case scenario for them and your worst case scenario for them?
I think best case scenario is you win a playoff round. You get to the second round, upset in the first round. Is Tatum going to be back? Who knows? That's another question there. Maybe your ceiling gets a little higher if he's back playing at a high level, but I just feel like that's so unlikely. So best case scenario, Tatum's back. You win a playoff series. You're competitive in the second round. Worst case, and again, this depends on who you ask. A couple of guys go down. They dive into the lottery, and they're where the Pacers are, more or less right now. That's still in play if a couple of guys go down for extended stretches. They've lost 2 games to health this year. Luka Garza missed a game with a concussion. Nemesh Keita missed a game with an ankle sprain, and they rested a couple of guys last night. That's extraordinary health, like Tatum aside.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. I don't think that ceiling, and we're talking best case scenario. I don't think that ceiling is high enough
Worth paying the
to where it's
tax.
worth paying the tax, especially nowadays where the repeater tax is what comes for you. And they are going to suffer the repeater tax. I forget exactly what their clock is right now, but they're a year from it, right? So
They need to be 2 years out to get out of it. They're in it right now.
Oh, they're in it now. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They are in it now. So you want to be able to get out of that if you can, because that is when it really, really, really gets bad when you start talking about repeater tax stuff. So that could be the reason that it's worth doing, because that can just cripple a franchise for a long time if you end up having to pay that much money for a team that doesn't really have particularly impressive hopes. But I don't know how you get it done. Like you mentioned, Brooklyn is a team that has space. There's some teams with larger trade exceptions. Atlanta has a large trade exception. Some other teams with larger trade exceptions. You could try to use that. Otherwise, I don't know. Maybe you end up holding on to him. Maybe you end up him giving up a sliver of his salary and a buyout, and that helps your tax bill at the end of it. I think they can realistically find a spot for him, but it's just complicated. It's complicated.
The buyout path's interesting. Yeah, especially, does that impact your cap hit if you save some money on a buyout?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
If they give back money. How far over the tax? How far over
11,
the tax are they
12.
Right.
So
I mean, realistically, he's not giving back enough to get you out of that. Maybe he gives back slightly enough to get you below the first apron, which right now they're like 4-ish
yeah
over the first apron. But also, like, probably not. Normally guys give up their minimum salaries. This is me spitballing right now,
Yeah.
having
No,
not thought that much about the Anthony Simons market.
it's clearly a challenge because they haven't been able to do it to this point. So do things change? Do needs emerge around the league? I think of Dallas. I don't know if they're going to try to compete here, but they clearly don't have anything going on in their backcourt. So I don't know if something would be possible there, given that they have a million big men too. I don't know how much money the Celtics even want to take back in these kind of trades because, I think they like the fact that there's 28 million coming off the books at the end of this year. So do you just eat the tax? I know Brad has said that, just avoiding the tax this year isn't a mandate necessarily, but obviously if that's where you're going to be, not in the mix this year, ownership does tend to like being out of the tax. So there's a lot going on here with this team. I want to ask before we get on to this game tomorrow, final takeaway you have from this season so far with them, something we haven't mentioned yet. If nothing's on your mind, I'll throw the Derek White situation at you because I think a lot of people looked at him and thought he was going to take a massive leap this year. And defensively, he's been great, as he always is. But offensively, he has really struggled to start this year.
Yeah. Let's talk about Derek White.
What do you see going on with him?
I see a man whose shot selection is not as easy as it once was.
Holy crap, is he taking tough shots?
He is taking, I wonder how many of his shots are coming late in the shot clock compared to years past. I felt like he was never the bailout guy in years past.
I saw a
right?
stat from Synergy. Yeah, and that's for sure. He is good at it, right? He can get a shot off in those situations. Obviously, it's a brutal shot to be taking for any player, but he is taking the second, or at least, when I saw this graphic, the second biggest increase in scoring off the dribble compared to last year. Only Drew Holiday has done more compared to his role last year than Derek White has. I think it was like a 40% leap or something like that. Everything just looks hard for him. I don't think he's been getting the best screening, the best setup to take easy shots. He, as we mentioned, never gets to the free throw line. So it's a lot of threes. I think he was up there with Curry for the most threes in the league taken at one point. The floater, the in-between hasn't been kind to him either. And obviously no one on this team's getting to the basket, as you mentioned. So when they can get him a catch and shoot look, when they can get him free for one of those, he's awesome. But that just hasn't happened as much this year. And it's a bummer because I think everybody saw a straight shot to him having an awesome year. There were probably some people who felt like he could be a borderline all-star given the responsibility he was going to take for this team with Tatum out. But instead, it just looks like a struggle, and it looks like it's mounting on him, just watching him after every missed shot right now.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say he's taking more shots off the dribble. I feel like part of it is he's just missing. He will get good looks now, right? And we're like, why did that not go in? That was a regular.
That's how the team feels to some degree. Yeah.
Right. 100%. It just feels like the Celtics didn't miss a three for so many years. And now Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser have decided to look human for a month. And I feel like some of the 3-point shooting stuff with them, with White and Pritchard and Hauser specifically, Sam Hauser he's like mid-30s from three, right?
Yep.
He's never in his entire life had a season in which he shot worse than 40% from three. He's never had a season in college or high school where he shot worse than 40% from three. He's always 40% from three. I feel like he'll probably get back there. I feel like this is probably him just missing more shots than he does. I feel similarly with Derek White. He's shooting under 30%. I mean, I made the comment about difficult shots, and that's obviously totally true. But he's shooting under 30% on catch and shoot threes right now, which is strange. He should never be shooting under 30% on catch and shoot threes. Last year, he was good on those. And not all catch and shoot threes are created equally. And not all threes are created equally. And these are more difficult threes, no question. And they're more rush threes, no question. But I feel like part of it is just he's not playing like himself. On top of the fact that he's having to be a bailout guy, he's having to create for himself more, he's having to create for others more. And I think it's going to get better. That's my Derek White prediction. I think it will get better.
It has to, and he has had a couple games recently where it looks like it's starting to get better. The Detroit game, he had some nice second half shooting in that one to lead them into the win, broke the Pistons' win streak. At that point, another impressive spot for this team where they're down Kada and beat the Pistons, who were just rolling coming in. So that was a wake-up night for him. He gets a night off on Sunday. Maybe he's sore, maybe he's dealing with some stuff. Who knows what's going on there? But it's been a weird start to the year for White. Pritchard has come out of his slump a little bit with 42 points. So that's the situation as this team heads to a tough game against the Knicks. And you were there. I think it was like the third or fourth game of the year, something like that, early on. The Knicks unloaded on Boston at MSG in the second quarter, I think, with a 28-point win in that quarter. That was the worst Celtics loss ever in a quarter. And it got a little better as the game went on. They made up some ground in the second half, but man, the Knicks hammered them that night, in the stretch that mattered. And Knicks are coming in playing well again, just smoked the Raptors. Brunson is playing at a high level. Robinson's back now. Did Robinson play in that game? I think he was out for the first Celtics-Knicks game, I want to say.
No.
Yeah, so he's going to cause big issues for the worst defensive rebounding team in the league, certainly here. Hart's playing good. OG is out, which could be impactful here right now, but this one looks like an uphill battle for the Celtics, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so. I think Mitchell, I think you nailed it. If I'm Joe Mazzulla and I'm walking into shoot around tomorrow morning, Mitchell Robinson's probably the first guy I'm talking about.
They're going to put him at the free throw line again? Last year.
Maybe. I mean, look, Mazzulla has shown through his actions how good he thinks Mitchell Robinson is, right? And he was great during that playoff series last year. But, I mean, this is the type of team that, like, him and Steven Adams can just feast on. Like, they can feast on the boards. Mitchell Robinson.
And the Rockets, another team that just crushed Boston when they played them.
Mm-hmm. The Knicks are one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the league. They're one of the best two-way rebounding teams in the league. Another team that's been really good at focusing on the possession game and winning that. Robinson's a nightmare. Josh Hart's a nightmare. That's going to be really tough for the Celtics, just having to block those guys out. I think they're going to have to send multiple guys at Robinson. He hasn't been starting lately. He's been coming off the bench. They just played the Raptors on Sunday. He had 15 rebounds in 17 minutes.
Ridiculous.
Outrageous.
And he feels like
I have the Knicks year. Yeah, no, he had a line earlier this year. He had 9 offensive rebounds in 14 minutes. It's like he just destroys worlds right now. His offensive rebound rate is like historic at the moment.
Yeah, and I have the Knicks in the finals still. I had them before the season. I still like their chances here at full health if that's where they can remain with Robinson. And it does feel a little bit like 2022 Rob Williams to some degree, where the Celtics are just this world beater when he's available and active and healthy. And when he's not there, it's a more vulnerable situation for that team. And I love what they look like with him in that lineup in New York. I think they're a level above probably the field. I don't love what I see from Cleveland right now, even though they've been banged up. And I don't see a clear path to the Magic challenging New York the way I thought they might be able to coming into this year. So, I mean, the Knicks are still that team to beat to me. I don't see any. Detroit's been impressive, and they obviously almost knocked off the Knicks in the first round last year. So I think that could be interesting. But this team's great. And, has there been a big difference under Mike Brown so far? Like, what's been the biggest change you feel like going from Thibodeau so far to Brown?
The biggest change is that there are changes.
Yeah.
The biggest change is that the Knicks so intentionally trotted out the same thing over and over again because Tom Thibodeau believes that if you do the same thing every day and you practice the same thing at an elite level every day, then you will be so good at doing that thing, then you will be able to beat people down with it. And it pretty much, I mean, it worked. They made the conference finals for the first time in a quarter of a century. The biggest difference is that stylistically now, they're not doing the same thing. They're last year, people make such a big deal about the minutes with Tibbs. I never thought the individual player minutes were as big of a deal as people said they were. The thing to me that always really stood out was the minutes of guys together. Like, it wasn't that you were playing OG Anunoby a lot of minutes and Josh Hart a lot of minutes and Jalen Brunson a lot of minutes and Mikal Bridges a lot of minutes. It was that you were playing those four a lot of minutes together. It was that the Knicks starting lineup led the league in minutes together by a ginormous number, even though it was getting outscored from January 1 on last year. And what we're seeing right now is a lot of different kinds of experimentation. I'll tell you the most jarring moment for me this year watching the Knicks was they played Miami on November 14th. And all these teams are going zone against Miami right now because Miami sets like no screens. So you want to teams are trying to combat that with a zone. And the Knicks, I want to say it was the second quarter, Knicks roll out a zone against Miami. I was like, oh my goodness, they ran a zone? They never. I can't remember the last time I saw the New York Knicks run zone. Mike Brown had never practiced the zone. He had never practiced the zone. He was like, you know what? We're just going to try it out. Let's just throw everybody in the deep end, see how everybody does. And let's see if this little 2-3 thing that we're going to try to put together against this incredibly fast, brilliantly coached team. Let's see how this goes. And he ran a little bit of zone. Then he did it the next time they played the Heat a few days later. The Knicks played more zone possessions in that November 14th game against the Heat than they did in the entire 5 years that Tom Thibodeau was head coach, according to Second Spectrum. That to me is the difference. The difference is that they are trying to not really have an identity. Sometimes Josh Hart starts, sometimes Deuce McBride starts, sometimes Mitchell Robinson starts. You're piecing together a bunch of different lineups. During that Toronto game the other night, Mike Brown used a 3-point guard lineup with Josh Hart and Karl Anthony Towns, and it looked really good till it didn't look really good. And I'm curious to see what he does with that one moving forward. Like, they just have a million different combinations that they're trying out, bunch of different defensive coverages they've tried out, bunch of different actions they've tried out. They've had times where they've leaned into the Brunson cat pick and roll. They've had times where they've leaned away from it. Just like they're still figuring out their identity. I would call them still a work in process. Sometimes it looks really good. That Toronto game, it looked awesome, especially offensively. Sometimes it doesn't look as good. Point of attack defense has been a problem for them all season. But it's still early enough to where it's like, we'll see. And when you're a work in progress and you're 13-6, that's a pretty good work in progress.
Last question I got before we get you out of here, and it's a great conversation. Appreciate you stopping by. Of course, everybody should check out Fred's work over at The Athletic. That series last year was a bit of a landmark moment for both these teams. Obviously, it closed the door for the moment on the Celtics contention dynasty attempt there, trying to repeat as champions. Blew 2 massive leads in the first 2 games. Like, there is some, I guess, solace among the Celtics fan base here that, they won 1 championship and, guys were hurt. The Porzingis thing here, which I know you revealed some details about earlier in the year when you talked to him, that threw that whole series for a loop. It's just an interesting series to look back on because it was such a massive upset. The Tatum injury at the tail end of it, I feel like dulled that a little bit. It was like, Tatum was out. That's why they lost. Guys were banged up, all that. But that was a crazy... I mean, no one going into that series thought New York was going to win, and they won pretty handily. And obviously, they've used that as momentum going into this year to potentially take over the East here. So, I mean, there's just a lot to look back on there. The illness thing with Porzingis, obviously, they traded him to Atlanta, and he's continued to deal with that. I know you reported that it was like POTS, P-O-T-S, whatever that he's dealing with. That's still a big time fallout in the East too now on this Atlanta team that's trying to contend here. So there's just so much stuff from that Knicks Celtics series last year. Looking back on it, it's still hard to believe that all happened. And obviously, Tatum's probably going to miss this entire season too, coming out of it with the Achilles tear. I feel like you could do like a documentary on everything that happened in that series. It was a crazy 6 games.
It was a crazy 6 games. That is totally true. That was a wild series. Like, you didn't even get into the 2 20-point blown leads in the
Yeah.
second half to start game 1 and game 2. Like, that's how you kick off the series. Mikal Bridges scoring 0 points in the first 3 quarters of game 2, then scoring 14 in the fourth to help out the comeback. Bridges with the game sealing plays on both those games. I mean, they were some crazy games. It was a really revealing moment, I thought, for the Knicks specifically, where, I mean, the Celtics did not have a normal version of Porzingis, and they didn't lose because Tatum got hurt. Like, sorry,
Yep.
they didn't.
They're already down.
I know you're not
8,
saying
9
that.
at that point. Yeah. No,
Right,
but that's
they're
a
down,
prevailing
and
sentiment, I feel like, maybe to make Celtics fans feel better.
yeah, I think that's a bit of a coping mechanism. I mean,
Yeah.
they were on the verge of falling down 3-1. Like, you lose your guy essentially down 3-1. You can't say you lost the series because you lost your guy. Like, you lost the series because you got outplayed. You lost the series because you blew 2 20-point leads because they just weren't good enough. And the Knicks outplayed them to the point of Tatum's injury. The Knicks outplayed them for all of game 4. And then Celtics blasted the Knicks in game 5, and the Knicks blasted them right back in game 6. That was a really telling moment for the Knicks, because that Knicks team, for basically the whole year, people wondered about their fortitude and like wondered about their ruggedness and their toughness, which was something that nobody really asked about with the previous iterations of the team. And to see them come out and have the mental fortitude to be able to come back multiple times to start that series against the defending champs in a series that nobody really had them winning, to come back after they lose game 3, play a really great game at home, and pull away in that series, to come back in game 6 after getting waxed in game 5 and say, nope, not playing with your food, just taking care of it on this evening. I thought it was a really pivotal moment for that team to be able to feel like, okay, they can do this. And obviously it was their first conference finals appearance in 25 years. But like, I think that team now, when it looks at stuff now, when they're experimenting or whatever else, they're like, yeah, well, we'll figure this out. We figured it out last year, and we figured it out in the most high stress time you could possibly figure it out, in the middle of a playoff series, partly in the middle of a playoff series against Detroit, and then partly in the middle of a playoff series against the defending champs. And they figured that out. And I think that gives them a little bit more confidence moving forward for sure.
Is Porzingis going to be all right? This is like very bizarre. I know you talked to him about it. Is this just kind of something he's going to have to manage going forward?
Yeah, it sounds like it's something he's going to have to manage going forward. I haven't spoken to him since I wrote that story about kind of what he was going through over the summer and during the playoffs. But yeah, it's a condition, you know. It's not like the flu where you have it until you don't have it. It's a condition that you have to manage and you have to deal with, and it sucks. It sucks for anybody who has it. I'm sure we all know some people with POTS. It sucks for anyone who has it, and it sucks especially if you're an athlete. So yeah, it's something he has to manage. It can get better. You can figure out better ways to manage it, and you can figure out, you know, over time, things that trigger it more and don't trigger it more and all that kind of stuff. But it's always going to be something he has to manage to a degree.
Yeah, and you do hate to put it this way, but you know, Celtics probably moved on at the right time there, given you know, where he was at health-wise and his contract and all that too. We'll see if he can figure it out down the stretch with the Hawks there. He's played well when he's been able to get on the court. It's a bummer though. Last year was the best year of his career. He was relatively healthy, managed them well right up until the end. He had that game at MSG that was just out of this world late in that season. And I remember doing a story going in the playoffs saying, all right, you know, I wasn't part of the championship run with the Celtics. I was on the sideline for pretty much all of it. I'm excited to be part of this one and like a, you know, contributor to this one in particular. And went the opposite way, as it does sometimes there. And that was the end of an era for the Celtics. And we'll see this new era of the Celtics try to take on, you know, a new era for the Knicks too, obviously under Mike Brown here tomorrow at the Garden. This should be an interesting game, even if the Knicks do look like a tough team to overcome for the Celtics here at this point in the season. They've been competitive in all their games, so should be a fun one. As I mentioned, check out Fred Katz in The Athletic. Anything else you want to shout out, plug over there, people should check out?
No, you can read me on The Athletic. You can subscribe to my podcast if you're interested. It's a Knicks podcast, Katz and Shoot, patreon.com/Katz and Shoot, Katz and Shoot. You can check that out. And that's it. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, awesome. One of my favorite writers around the league.
Thanks,
Some of
man.
the best coverage you'll get out there. Not only the Knicks, but everybody now that he's in more of a national role now. So check that out over at The Athletic. Check out Prize Picks. Use the code CLNS to get 15 lives after you play your first $5 lineup. And it is Cyber Monday, so check out our store at shop.clnsmedia.com. Go get your hard hat. 30% off right now over there with the code Cyber Monday. That's it for us. We'll be back after Celtics Knicks tomorrow with post game live. We'll be over at the Garden. Noah and I, Jimmy and John and Sherrod should be back for this one as well, I believe. So full crew for a big game here to start the week. Looking forward to December. Good slate for the Celtics coming up. I do hate the NBA Cup stretch where there's just like 2 games in 11 days. But I guess we'll take the rest or practices or whatever we're going to get over that stretch. Thanks again, Fred. Thanks everybody for tuning in live here, and we will see you tomorrow. Peace.